Are you struggling to get your toddler talking? Have you tried everything and nothing seems to be working? Well, there are a lot of things that can impact speech and language in young children, and one of them is their communication style. I'm Jill, I'm the mentor mom, and today I'm going to share with you some of the insights into communication styles with toddlers that I've learned over the last 20 plus years of being an early childhood interventionist. Understanding this can sometimes be the game changer in getting that toddler moving on the pathway to words. So let's get to it. Okay, so in a previous video, I talked about temperament, and communication style is kind of related to temperament, at least in my mind. So I am going to suggest that you go back and watch that video. But when I'm talking communication style, I'm really talking about a little bit of the personality, but it's really more of kind of a preference. If you think about it like us as adults, some of us are introverts, some of us are extroverts, some of us are super chatty, some of us like to kind of sit back and see what's going on first and jump in only when we feel like we have to, and some of us are just going to avoid interacting and communicating at all. So that's kind of what I'm talking about when I'm talking about communication styles. So today I'm going to talk to you about toddler communication styles and share the categories or the types that I've encountered over my 20 plus years of doing this. We'll talk in the future about your communication styles as a parent so we can get a picture of kind of like how they all work together, or sometimes they don't work together so well and we have to change what we're doing. So let's get started and talk about our first communication style. The first group is what I call social tots. These are the easy kids to work with. They're social, they enjoy interacting with people, they're usually really good in initiating, they're usually pretty good at imitating our gestures, sometimes not so much our sounds, but these are the kids that are just really super easy to work with. And in my experience, these are the kids who, once we start doing some different strategies and tweaking maybe some of the things we're doing in our routines or as a parent during communication interactions, these are the kids that tend to kind of take off pretty quickly because they're really eager and active communicators. The next communication style is the busy tot. These are the tots that are always in motion. They're bouncing off the walls. They're jumping off the chairs. They have really, really short attention spans. If you're trying to sit down and read a book, they're not having it. They got to be on the go. So these kids can be a real challenge for parents. So we really need to focus our energy with these kids on trying to figure out how to join their activity level and incorporate the language there. The next communication type is the independent tot. These kids kind of like to do their own thing. They're not ones to join us with what we're doing. We have to figure out how to join them. They're a lot of times not that responsive or interested in play partners. So if we think back to the foundational language skills, which I've talked about in previous videos, which I encourage you to go check out, these are kiddos who are really on that bottom step. We got to work on engagement. So they just kind of like to be on their own, which, a lot of parents are like, it's great. He likes to play on his own. That's great to a certain point, but when they're wanting to do that all the time and they're not interested in playing or interacting with people, that is a red flag. We'll oftentimes see young children who may potentially end up getting a diagnosis of autism be an independent tot. But having said that, I've worked with many, many independent tots who were not on the autism spectrum as we worked with them and got older. So I don't want you to automatically think that because they're an independent tot and kind of want to do things their own way, that necessarily means that it's autism. It's really about working on that engagement with these little ones. Moving on to the next communication style, it is my personal favorite, the politely stubborn tot. These are kiddos who have a high need for control. They tend to have a really good understanding of language, but they're really the ones who seem to be the most resistant to imitation, which is something we talked about in the foundational language skills in a previous video. They're usually pretty active communicators, and they're usually pretty effective at communicating using gestures, not so much any kind of sounds or words. And they tend to be really, really quiet during play. And my experience has been that a lot of the tots that struggle or the politely stubborn communicators, they oftentimes have difficulty with the motor planning part of speech, which might be why they're so resistant to imitating. But it's also about that control piece. You try to encourage them to do it, and they're the ones that look at you like, no, I know you're trying to get me to do something, and I'm not doing it. So these can be really tricky kids for parents. They can be tricky for interventionists, but I just love politely stubborn kids because it shows they got it going on upstairs. They're just trying to figure out how much control they can have over the situation. So we have to come up with some sneaky strategies with these little ones. Love me a politely stubborn tot. And the last communication type is the passive tot. Slightly similar to the politely stubborn tot, they tend to have a strong need for control, and they will initiate and they will engage, but these are the kids that don't want to work very hard. They're the ones where you start to put a little bit of a demand or try to get them to do something. They sense it and they're like, I'll walk away. They have really low motivation, I guess you could say. So for example, I had a little girl I worked with a long time ago who she would sit down, she was interested in what I brought, but the minute me or mom tried to do anything, like maybe to give her choices where she would have to point to or reach for what she wanted, as soon as we started to do that, she'd be like, no, I'm out, and she would walk away. She'd just give us this look. These kiddos, for me personally as an interventionist, are probably the most challenging to work with because you have to figure out what is it that they are willing to work for. You know, for some kids, it may be one particular snack that they really, really want to work for, or it could be one particular activity, but they have a really small repertoire of things that they're willing to do the work for. So it's really a matter of continuing to build the strategies into those things that you do know that they're going to work for. So that is the passive tot. The next communication style is the cautious tot. These little ones can be really challenging for parents. They're observers. They like to sit back and watch what's going on. They pay really super close attention to new people. They're not ones to jump in and do things and try things. They'd rather kind of sit back on the periphery and make sure that it's safe. These are the kids that have a temperament that could be described as slow to warm. And they do best when their communication partner really reads and follows their body language. They're not typically big fans of big energy until they really get to know you. For example, I had a little student that I worked with many years ago who was definitely one of these cautious tots. I had to pay really, really close attention to her body language because she was sending messages clearly through her facial expression and her body language when things were too much or when she didn't want to do a particular activity. And the hard part was, the parent wasn't necessarily recognizing and tuning into that body language because sometimes it can be super subtle. So, for example, if I would lean in, she would lean out a little bit and turn her body. My response would be like, okay, we don't have to do that. They need to know that you're understanding the messages that they're sending nonverbally. As she began to see that I was recognizing that, okay, Jill's moving too close, I turned my body, she stopped what she's doing, and started to realize that I get it. I get how you're communicating with me. And we got the mom and dad on board to recognize that as well. As she started to feel more comfortable in the fact that her communication partners were going to understand her and what she was trying to communicate. She didn't have any words at the time, but she was very, very bright. As she started to recognize that we recognized the messages she was sending, she started to kind of let that guard down. She became more willing to try things, ever so slowly and ever so cautiously, but she slowly started to kind of step out of that comfort zone and try some things. But the big piece here with these kiddos is trust. So why do I bring this up, these communication styles or preferences? It's because we have to be aware of them so that we can tweak how we're interacting with them, right? And again, I'm going to talk about parenting communication styles in the next video next week. But I want you to kind of think about, how our communication styles work with their communication styles. For example, that politely stubborn child coming in and telling them, say this, say that, recipe for disaster. They do not want to be told what to do. You tell them to say ball, use your words. They're not doing it. They're like, nope. First of all, it's hard for me. And secondly, I like to have control. So don't even try to get me to do it. So that's what I'm hoping that you'll kind of think about as we look at these different kinds of communication styles, is already start thinking about, like, how is it that you're communicating with your child and trying to get them to move towards words? Are you doing it in a way that works with their particular communication style? I want you to think about it from the perspective of, if you're an introvert, right, who feels uncomfortable in parties and around new people, being with somebody who's an extrovert that's just saying, just go talk to people, just go talk to people, just go do it, right? It would get really annoying. It would make you feel uncomfortable. We want to think about that with our kiddos based on their particular kinds of communication styles. So I hope you found this information helpful. And again, we're going to continue to build on this so that we can look at how all of these things work together and can impact communication development in young kids. All right, so that is it for this week. If you found this helpful, go ahead and like and subscribe down below. Also, please be sure to subscribe to my newsletter so you know when I've got new videos coming out, and I've got some interesting and exciting things coming up as far as products and services if you're interested in working with me. So go ahead and click on the link on the box on the screen and subscribe to my newsletter. All right, you guys, I will see you next time for more toddler tips.